The Mask, in 1994, took the world by storm and became a true pop culture classic that fans talk about even now. It turned Jim Carrey into a superstar, launched Cameron Diaz's career, and gave us a comic book adaptation that felt fresh, funny, and unlike anything else at the time. Naturally, the question came up almost immediately. When's the sequel? Unfortunately, that sequel never came to be. So what happened? Let's dive straight into the detail. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. When and why did plans for a Jim Carrey-led Mask sequel first arise? Whenever something explodes at the box office, everyone starts to cheer about a sequel. The Mask was no exception. Jim Carrey, with his stellar performance, delivered a world-class film that collected over $351.6 million worldwide. And to think it was shot with a budget of $18 million, critics loved Carrey's manic magic, unanimously agreeing that no one could have played the part better. Cameron Diaz lit up the screen in her debut, and even the visual effects got an Oscar nod. The movie had an equal impact on Jim Carrey's career success during the same time. Jim Carrey had worked on other prominent hits like Ace Ventura and Dumb and Dumber, which, together with The Mask, took Carrey's career to new heights. Even now, after decades, The Mask is considered to be one of the must-watch works of Carrey, with his wild antics, perfect comic timing, and over-the-top mannerisms. After all this success, a sequel felt inevitable. It was just a matter of when. Soon enough, talks of The Mask 2 kicked into gear. Nintendo made the talks more real and even announced a contest for fans, upon which they would offer the winner a walk-on role in the sequel. Imagine a chance to work alongside Jim Carrey. Obviously, the excitement felt real. So did the sequel ever happen? Yes and no. You've heard of animated movies or series being made into live-action film, but this was one of those rare times when a live-action film inspired an animated series. An animated sequel to the film ran for 3 seasons, from 1995 to 1997. Later, in 2005, another sequel came out, titled Son of the Mask. However, unfortunately, Jim Carrey was not a part of either of these projects, and The Mask 2, which was supposed to feature him, and of course, the winner of the Nintendo contest never got B. On the bright side, the Nintendo winner did end up receiving a cash prize of $5,000 and a sincere apology printed in the magazine's last issue. But why did this anticipated sequel never happen? Let's explore further. What creative and personal factors caused Jim Carrey to refuse the sequel? Jim Carrey, during that phase, experienced success like never before, so he was being offered roles left and right. He was indeed approached for The Mask 2 as well, and was offered a whopping $10 million to don Stanley Ipkiss's Mask again. That was a ton of money, especially during the 90s. And yet the idea of the sequel failed to impress and hook Carrey into the project. His ride in Ace Ventura, When Nature Called, could be blamed for it as well. Carrey was quite wary after his performance in When Nature Called, and he expressed that doing the same character again felt creatively hollow. According to Carrey, the sequel to The Mask was not challenging enough for him, and he had no intention of repeating the same performance over and over. The sequel sounded like a big old red flag, and he turned it down. Carrey didn't want to cash in by reprising an old role. He wanted freshness, something that pushed him as an actor. To Carrey, making the sequel was just cashing in on the success of the first movie. But ultimately, the idea was stale and more of a business move than an artistic one. That's a huge creative hang-up for someone who thrives on pushing boundaries. Subsequently, with Carrey unwilling to compromise his craft, all the buzz around the sequel felt pointless. After all, how would the sequel work if the core ingredient was missing? The makers knew that without Carrey, the sequel wouldn't be able to carry that momentum and spark, at least in live-action form, so the whole idea tanked. Eventually, the idea did get flipped into an animated sequel, and Son of the Mask, but the original plans pretty much disappeared into box office oblivion. How did studio actions, the Nintendo Power Contest, and public expectation increase pressure for The Mask 2? The moment The Mask blew up in 1994, makers jumped in to cash in on that success, wasting no time at all. New Line Cinema, riding high at the moment, became hungry for more and instantly devoted itself to cross-promotion. That's when they teamed up with Nintendo Magazine to hype up the potential sequel through a contest. Now it's important to understand that Nintendo Magazine was a kid's golden ticket to the gaming world, so this partnership with Nintendo made the possibilities of a sequel very real and tangible for the fan. Nintendo Power, in 1995, in the 77th issue, ran a contest that would allow the winner to visit the sets of The Mask and even have a chance to become an extra in the film. On the fan side, and especially contest winner Nathan Runk from Maryland, The excitement must have been off the charts. Nintendo Power kept the dream alive, having its managing editor call him every few months. But things started unraveling behind the scenes. We already discussed how Carrey himself was not up for the role. Moreover, Carrey was in demand at the moment with arguably bigger projects, like Batman Forever in the works, and even the director, Chuck Russell, had moved on to Eraser with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Meanwhile, Nathan was stuck holding on to hope for over a year, along with other fans. The Mask 2 wasn't downright canceled. Rather, it was postponed indefinitely. Although looking back, a straightforward cancellation would have spared the fans from all the anticipation and high expectation. Thankfully, Nathan was not completely ghosted, and Nintendo, along with THQ, the publisher of the SNES game, came to his rescue and offered him a consolation prize of $5,000 and a crew jacket. The crew jacket was a bit odd, considering that the film never got made, but at least it relieved him of the endless waiting. His experience perfectly encapsulates the Mask 2's slide into development hell. Eventually, the sky-high expectation that the audience had also subsided. Were any stories, scripts, or early concepts for The Mask 2 actually developed? Short answer, yes, there was. In fact, the real early development on a Jim Carrey-led Mask 2. It never got far enough to lock a script or start shooting, and once Carrey walked out, that whole version effectively died. On his 1996 Laserdisc commentary, director Chuck Russell mentioned that he wanted Carrey back, and he even planned to bring back Amy Asbeck as Peggy Brandt. He literally cut Peggy's death from the first film to keep her available for part 2. And of course, New Line created all the public hype. That promotion shows the studio was treating the sequel as an active project. Even if paperwork-wise, it was still just in development. Russell's comments make it clear that there was at least an outline-level plan centered on Carey Stanley and Peggy's return. Fan-compiled development notes say Russell intended to write the first treatment himself and lean harder into the musical/comic set-piece energy he loved from the first movie. Think more Cuban Pete-style showstoppers. To be fair, if it were true, it would have aligned quite well with the over-the-top aspects of the film. Now, this might have been just rumor, but Russell has described the sequel as his secret musical, so there might have been some truth to it as well. Did they commission a full screenplay before Carrey bailed? There's no reliable record of a compiled pre-1995 script. The best evidence suggests Russell was prepping treatment notes and lining up returning characters. But once Carrey declined, momentum flatlined, and New Line stopped pushing that version. Concept art or boards from the Carrey sequel haven't surfaced publicly. You'll find lots of behind-the-scenes art for the 1994 film, and there are scattered online claims about early Mask 2 artwork, but nothing verifiable is tied to the abandoned Carrey iteration. So to put it simply, the Carrey-led Mask 2 had a director with a plan, characters earmarked to return, a studio stoking demand, and at least a treat on the table, but no confirmed finished script or shoot. How did the sequel's collapse share the future of the Mask franchise? Animated, live-action, spin-off. After Carrey declined the sequel, there was no question of another live-action sequel at that point. But does that mean the success of the first film would be completely abandoned? Of course not. Once the New Line cinema was quite clear that Carrey wouldn't be suiting up for them again, they pivoted to an alternative, an animated series. The Mask, the animated series, premiered in 1995 and ran for 54 episodes in total. The story of this animated series picked up right where the Mask live-action film had left off. It followed Stanley Ipkiss's mask-filled chaos as he went on to become a personal assistant to the president and many more of his wild antics. It even spawned a comics tie-in in Adventures of the Mask. Rob Paulsen voiced Stanley Ipkiss. Milo the dog got more adventure time, and Peggy Brandt returned, but this time without any romantic drama. There were some other changes as well, including no more only nighttime rule for the Mask, and a tad more kid-friendly tone. But overall, the animated series did quite well in upholding the essence of the original film. It was quite a successful sequel. However, we cannot say the same for the sequel that came years later, in 2005, Son of the Mask. It was an absolute disaster of a film. According to critics, Son of the Mask was a bad movie altogether. It was New Line's rebound that did not go as planned. This sequel centered around Tim Avery, his dog Otis, and his magically superpowered baby. The sequel even brought back Loki. But despite all this, the movie just lacked heart. The film flopped hard. Budgets were estimated between $84 to $100 million. It grossed under $60 million. And critics absolutely shredded it with Rotten Tomatoes sitting around 6% and a score of 20 on Metacritic. We don't even know where to start. The script was weak. The CGI was bad. The slapstick was aimless. And the characters were just bleh. Bottom line, the collapse of The Mask 2 forced the franchise to survive through cartoon, while the failed Son of the Mask made sure Hollywood thought twice about trying another live-action Mask. Has there ever been serious movement on a reboot or a revival with Carrey? Carrey may have declined The Mask 2 back then, but he's never said never. He seems to have kept an open mind about it and might actually return to do a sequel, but only under the right circumstances. In an interview with NDTV in 2024, he clearly mentioned that money is not the correct motivator, and we don't doubt him for a bit. After all, he turned down the $10 million offer back then. According to Carrey, if the right script came under the right circumstances, he'd definitely consider donning the mask once again. It's the creative spark he's looking for. He reiterated the same thing to people as well, and said that he'd do the mask again if the concept clicked, saying he'd be drawn back by a project he cares about. Cameron Diaz is definitely on board, but her only precondition is that Carrey has to be a part of the project too. Diaz, during a Netflix promotion, mentioned that she had been eyeing a comeback in The Mask since day one, but only if Jim Carrey was on. So without him, it would be a no-go for Diaz as well. Now comes the question of whether there is still a public appetite for The Mask or not. The answer seems to be yes. Directors and fans have nudged for a comeback. Screenwriter/producer Mike Richardson of Dark Horse said in 2014 that the possibility of a reboot is still alive in conversation. Even Chuck Russell, the original director of The Mask, recently mentioned that he'd been open to revisiting it. But again, everything comes down to finding the right story and script. All of it is still a gentle pull, and nothing is concrete. But here's what we can tell you for sure. Fans would love to forget that the Jamie Kennedy sequel ever happened, and would love a proper, well-made sequel. Marvelous verdict. Looking back, The Mask 2 is one of those what could have been stories that still fascinates fans decades later. On paper, everything was there. A blockbuster hit, a willing studio, even sketched out sequel plan. But once Jim Carrey said no, the magic was gone. Instead, the franchise splintered into an animated series that worked surprisingly well, and later into Son of the Mask, which, well, let's just say it buried any chance of a proper live-action revival for a long time. And yet, the legacy of The Mask endured, and fans will never stop hoping for that much-deserved proper sequel. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one, and be safe. Thanks, everyone.